What's going on, everybody? Christy Francesco, Johnny Mack in the building as a co-host today. We are your unofficial, official post-game show as the Phillies literally just beat the Toronto Blue Jays 9-4. Thank God is really the first thing that came to my mind after three consecutive losses of just really barely touching the baseball with their bats. And to come out here on a Wednesday night on a quick back end of a two-gamer here up in Toronto to score 9 runs. John, that was exactly what we wanted to see out of this game, right?
Yes, after Friday nights where they just put up 13 runs. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this offense is finally getting hot. I can't wait to see what's going to happen here. And then it was nothing for 3 straight games, and I was getting worried because I was thinking to myself, I was thinking like the Silvio quote from The Sopranos, where just when I'm out, they pull me back in every single time. It's like that all year long, every year. It's just like you want to get out, and then you're like, oh, you're back. Like, they do something like this, and they're back in.
For sure. Like this is one of those games where I was like, look, if they lose this one and they get swept in a two-game set here against Toronto, I'm not going to necessarily act like the world is ending, but I really just wouldn't feel super confident going into the weekend series, dropping 4 in a row. For a while it was looking like again the bats were not um, coming alive. It necessarily it really came around in that 5th inning when they were able to score 3 runs and then 2 more in the 6th. But still, it did look like in the very beginning of this game, John, that this offense is still little fiddling around here. And then, Harper, and we'll talk a little bit about Bryce, like we did right before we hit record here. I was getting worried a little bit in the beginning of this game that we might get 1 to 2 runs and then it might stop. Like, was that worry in your head again as the game was kind of puddling along?
No, because I know before the game that I saw that the Phillies lineup was hitting like 287 against
Mm-hmm.
besides Rojas, they were all hitting like 287 together against Gosman. So I wasn't too worried about them. I knew they were going to eventually get to him. The
Right.
one thing I was just concerned about, they're both playoff teams, that Minnesota and Toronto, and you're going to lose 4 straight to those teams. Like they're teams that you're going to face in the playoffs, especially in that wild card game or whatever wild card spot you're in. You're going to be facing a team similar to those two teams that aren't at the top, but they're right in the mix for a playoff spot.
For sure. And as it sits right now, the Phillies are 66 and 55. They are 3.5 games atop of the NL wildcard standings as they now head. I'm sorry, I think the Phillies are 67 and 55 now as they head into a weekend series against Washington. So let's kind of just let's talk about the game and let's break it down. Much rather discuss what just happened than really talk about how bad Tuesday was, because that was just such a frustrating game to watch, especially that Zach Wheeler pitched so well, and the offense just could literally do nothing. And I felt like, is this team ever going to win a game in Toronto? Like I just felt like, what is going on?
First game since 2018.
I know. So I did want to ask you before we do break down tonight's game, which was a huge win, a lot to talk about, positive and negative. You can find negatives in a 9-4 win. Hashtag Aaron Nola every single time. What did you see out of Zach Wheeler yesterday that really did it feel good to see him dominate like that?
Yes, it felt like he was back, and recently he's been pitching very, very well. Hopefully, he can lead this on to the end of September and then the postseason. But I'm just happy he's back. I felt like early on in the year he was struggling. I was wondering if like the innings were too taxing on him last year, because that was the longest he's ever pitched and the most innings he ever pitched last year.
Yeah.
And I know when he was with the Mets, he was always in and out, always on the IL. He was always hurt, especially after that World Series run. He struggled the following season. So I was wondering if that was a similar thing that was going to happen this year. But it seems like he's been healthy all year. I just didn't want to get that dead arm again, which scares me a little bit too.
For sure. Yeah, that velocity is still a little down.
Yeah,
But
and that
look,
one more thing. One thing
yeah,
that did bother me about Wheeler is his strikeouts are still a little low this year, and he did have 4 walks, which is pretty high too. So that's the one thing a little concerning. But he went 7 innings, 1 run. You can't complain about that out of a starting pitcher. That's fantastic.
no. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. But a little bit more on today's game. the Phillies did end a 3-game losing skid. 2 home runs for Bryce Harper. Jake Cave hit a majestic bomb later on in the game as well. And beating Gossman, man, is a good quality win. No doubt about that. You see Gossman came in with, I think, a little bit of an over 3 ERA, maybe like 3.02, 3.03. I thought for sure it would have been a rough day at the office for the Phillies, but no, man, like after that third or fourth inning, they really locked in on him. So let's kind of just let's talk about a little bit. Let's talk about Bryce Harper. Harper, who we've been talking, you just joined the group chat, a week or so ago, but literally the majority of the topics before you jumped in were, how bad Aaron Nola and Kyle Schwarber are, and then back into, man, we really just want to see Bryce's power stroke come back. Tonight, Harper hits 2 home runs, one 415 foot to center, and then the next one, without even a stride, hits 410 feet. Just a piss rod off the bat. Again, we talked about this before we hit record, John. It's so different and significantly more fun to watch the Phillies when that guy is on. And how great was it to finally see Harper smash not 1 but 2 home runs Wednesday night?
It was awesome, but the one thing I will say about this, they're always solo home runs. I don't understand why there's nobody ever on base for him. Was it 2 years ago where it was like 18 straight home runs of solo home runs and he wasn't in it? But it's great to see him finally get his power going. And then what was it? Yeah. I guess the National Series where he finally broke out, hit 2 home runs in that series, and I think he almost hit that had another game where he hit 2 home runs, but he just got robbed from the home run. So it's good to see him going. I mean, his swing's just majestic, and it's so violent and pure, and it's not like a trout swing where it's short and come back. It's a little longer, but it's so beautiful when he's swinging that back and how hard he swings. And once he gets a hold of the ball, you just know it's gone. And with his antics too, it's just great seeing him run around the bases and his celebrations and all that stuff too. Yeah, it fires you up and it fires the team up too. And that's what I felt like when he hit that first home run. It kind of was like, they're like, let's go time now. Like our boy just hit a home run. Now it's time for us to put some runs up, and that's what happened.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. That first one, my goodness. So the camera angle, if anybody watched the game on TV, whoever the cameraman was tonight for NBC Sports Philly needs to have a stern talking to, because he had a rough night today. But you could tell, the home run for Harper, it was from behind. It was behind the backstop. And obviously, for those who probably watch this show right now, you've watched baseball for a long time, you watch the Phillies really often. You could tell even from that back spot that when he swung that and he hit that ball, even from that view, you knew it was gone. Like you could just tell by the way he swung the bat and how he did his normal, little tiny bit walk and held the bat with both hands and watched it. I knew off the bat, oh my gosh, thank God that ball's going. Look, I'm a mark for Bryce Harper. I've said this on almost every episode I can. He's my favorite baseball player, and I just love watching the guy. He's just a true superstar, and the fact that we're running hard towards a playoff berth here, and if you really want to become a massive threat in the National League, John, you need Bryce Harper to start ripping the cover off the ball. But you're right. Another thing is when he's batting third, and again it goes back to Schwarber and it goes back to. Alec Boehm's not the issue. Alec Boehm's phenomenal this season. You got to get people on base for Bryce at that number 3 spot. And, that's going to be something that I believe, you brought up right away. And that's something I'm going to start paying a lot more attention to is when you got your guy hitting 3 and he's somebody that gets on base, he's not just a home run hitter. Clearly he can hit 25 to 30 doubles. He can smash singles. He's going to drive in runs. You got to get on base for him, right?
Yes, and I wrote some things down today. I mean, Schwarber's over his last 15 once again. And you can't hit leadoff. You just can't. Yeah. And it's he walks. Well, he has 2 walks in his last 15, in his last 17 plate appearance. So it's not like he's walking at a high rate either. Struck out 8 times. That's just doing nothing. And I know a few of those games he struck out. Was it twice or struck out the once with on Sunday? He struck out once with the bases loaded, and then he pops up the first base. Are you kidding me? And he got lucky today. And I mean. Make no sense at all. A new pitcher comes in, you swing at the first pitch. He got lucky. He had a fly ball to right field, and thank God JT's fast because Springer that was an unbelievable throw by Springer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great tag by JT there, but and not just the strikeout totals don't necessarily bother me. And again, we've talked about this at nauseum before. Strikeouts aren't a big deal to me anymore because look, the league does two things now. They hit home runs at record paces. They strike out at record paces. So that it is what it is. Hence why, because Aaron Nola strikes a lot of guys out, it's not that impressive to me anymore. There, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, Randy Johnson was striking out 330 guys a year, and we're celebrating a pitcher who strikes 200 guys out a year. He must be so great, right? But notwithstanding, as I digress, Nola brings out the worst in me, but Schwarber is right there. It's the way Schwarber strikes out. And one, when he swings, they're ugly. I mean, ugly, half-hearted swings. And then when he stares at these backwards Ks, they are right down the middle. And I don't understand, John. I'm happy you're here because you and I, we've played baseball our whole lives. And I don't understand, even at the pro level, why these dudes continue with two strikes, stare at pitches that are remotely close inside the zone. I don't understand why. Even a leadoff hitter, your job's to get on base. If you're down two strikes, if you're down 1-2-0-2, why, again, in professionals, are you relying on an umpire call? I don't get it.
I don't. I mean, I know there's sometimes. I sent you that video earlier today with that pitch wasn't even close. Sometimes that stuff happens, but
It happens.
I mean, for me, I was always comfortable with two strikes. I don't know if people they don't.
I
they're not
always
comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And then there's situations too. I've never faced a major league pitcher. I know that. I remember that Harper at bat where against was it Hobie Milner where he just like looked out of it. I wonder if they can't pick it up certain things like the spin and certain things like that in certain situations like that. I wonder if they struggle with that against major league pitching, and that's why, with spin rate nowadays it's so like popular and how your spin rate is so much faster and all that other stuff. I wonder if it's getting so high that they just can't realize like what's coming at sometimes. They think they're getting a curveball and they're sitting curveball and then they get frozen up that a fastball comes right down the middle of the plate and they just weren't ready for it. It has to be some situation like that I don't understand, and Schwarber's the worst at it. And I think you should have a talk with Bryson Stott, who probably is the best 0-2 hitter there is in baseball. I mean, it's unbelievable what he does. 0-2 to 3-2 almost every single time. And even if he gets out, I mean, I can't be mad at the guy who just worked a great at bat and worked pitches and everything too.
You mean Bryson Stott, the guy who gets benched against lefties but is hitting over 300 against them?
Yeah, that's another thing Robert does a lot that I just don't understand.
I think when we open up the merch store, there will be a Robert T-shirt.
He'll never be called Topper, never be called Rob Thompson. It's always Robert. He deserves it. I don't think he's a good coach at all. He makes questionable decisions all the time, and sometimes he does get lucky. And I think that's what he tries to go with these things because he's gotten lucky before. Mm-hmm. This season just hasn't worked as well as it did last year during the postseason.
I agree. So if you look down the rest of the lineup here, Schwarber again, 0 for 3 with a walk, 2 strikeouts, had that sacrifice fly. His batting average is now sitting at a beautiful 180. Alec Boehm, rough night, 1 for 5, but did have that big RBI, still hitting 280. Harper, again, 3 for 4, 3 runs, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs, and a walk. Just a phenomenal night for Bryce. Casty went 2 for 5. Stott 1 for 5. Turner 1 for 4. JT 1 for 4. Jake Cave, big game, 2 for 3, 2 ribbies. And then Rojas 0 for 3. However, 11 hits though, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. Overall, man, I'd say it was a really good outing, a much needed outing from this offense. John, does this make you? Should we pump our brakes by saying, look, it looks like the offense is back, or should we be like, you know what, this is what they should be doing? It should continue going against Washington.
I expected them to do exactly this against Washington. Their pitching staff isn't great. I didn't see who's pitching yet, but Gray sometimes, but usually the Phillies hit Gray pretty well. So I'm not too worried about that. And then Gore's had an up and down year, so I'm not too worried about any of their pitchers. And they should continue this only going to the series, but it's the Phillies, so who knows what they're going to end up doing. I mean, I expect this every single night, and then we'll see what happens. They could go cold again, who knows? And we sit here on Sunday like, oh, what just happened after that 9-run game?
Well, I mean, just a quick little update, though. That was Bryce Harper's first multi-home run game since June of last season. So I'm happy it happened, but it's something that you actually we don't see often is Bryce hitting those multi-home run games. But look, the offense, the offensive resurgence that we saw, it really was needed. It was very necessary, and we're gonna time to get to the little negative part of the show, but it just has to be talked about. This offensive output was necessary because Aaron Nola once again needed the run support to earn this. I guess earn the win. He didn't earn anything. He struck out 7 batters, but 4 earned runs over 5 innings. I'm going to just give some numbers here for people. In his last 6 starts, Nola's 1-3. I'm sorry, 2-3 now, with an ERA of 5.10, and opponents are hitting 275 against him, 8 home runs, and over 40 hits. That's in his last 6 starts. And then you kind of go a little deeper than that. In his last 10 road starts, he's 4-4 with a 5.52 ERA, 16 home runs in 62 innings, 66 hits in those 62 innings, and a WHIP of 1.3. John, look, I know people carry on about Nola, how he's just not that guy. He's not that guy. For the better part of the last 4 or 5 years, he is what we've been seeing. I don't think he's, a 4.7 ERA guy that he's probably going to end up at, or a 4.5, but I still think he's an over 4 ERA pitcher. At what point, John, what is it going to take for people to finally realize that he's just not the guy that so many people wanted him to be?
I think you're starting to realize it now, because he was always sitting around a 3 to a 3.5 ERA most of the time. And he was always striking out a high percentage of guys. I think now you're starting to see what he really is, and this is a guy. Read all those stats. This is a guy who turned 5 years, 125 down at the beginning of the season. Like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Way to go. Way to bet on yourself.
Yeah.
And I did pick him to win the Cy Young this year, so I'm not gonna.
You
I was
and
one of those
Jason
guys.
picked him to win the Cy Young.
I was never a Nola guy, but I thought he would come out with a different attitude because he wanted to get paid and he wanted to get that contract. Yeah. I figured he would come out and try to prove something, that he is that guy. And I've always said he's a great 3. He's not a 1. He's a good 2, but he's a great 3. And I know somebody's going to pay him this offseason, and he's going to get his money. And I think it's going to be Houston, and he's going to go down there, and he's going to be unbelievable because they just do something different with pitchers in Houston, and he'll be able to be in the heat. And that's one thing, too, I noticed this year. He hasn't really had that many games where it's just been 90 degrees out, high humidity, and that's where he thrives in. That's one thing we haven't seen him pitch this year in that type of weather. So that could be a problem too. But overall, he stinks. I texted. I knew at some point in that inning he was going to blow that 1-0 lead, and he did it. He just doesn't have, his fastball isn't good enough to throw it consistently. And in that was that the 5th inning or 4th inning, he was throwing so many fastballs. Like
4th.
His fastball is 4th. It was the 4th.
Yeah.
His fastball, when it's tailing, and even Ben Davis said, like, that's when his fastball is good. And when Brandon Belt swung and missed, when it's tailing away, that's when it's great. And when his curveball's on, you just haven't seen that at all this year.
No.
His curveball's been inconsistent, and he's throwing it a lot. And when you have that, when his 2-seam is tailing, because he doesn't have the velocity to throw his fastball all the time. So when that 2-seam's tailing and everything, and he's throwing that curveball on top of that, that's when he's good. And you just haven't seen it at all this season.
My also another problem that I was noticing in the first 2 innings, he was getting that 4-seamer put up to over. I saw quite a few 4-seam fastballs at 95 miles per hour, and all of a sudden by the 4th and the 5th, I see it dropping to 92. So I'm not. Is he lowering the velocity because maybe he's not hitting his spots the way he wants to do? But the fact is that he's shown that he can hit that 95 on the gun. Is he just not confident in consistently throwing that hard? Because to me, if you could throw 95 and you're Aaron Nola and you don't have a dominant pitch that makes you, that separates you from a lot of other people, if you can hit 95, I mean, you better keep working on it and keep it, because throwing 92 is just going to get you hit. Like unless you're Greg Maddux, you're not going to last long in a game just throwing 92 mile per hour 4-seams. And that's just, I feel like after the 2nd inning, that's when the Blue Jays, we're seeing almost the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you can't throw 95 plus nowadays, then what's the point anymore?
Jason Kent checking in, who can't do the show, but he can make a dumb comment. So that's always good to see with Jason Kent. He won't deny the viewers of dumb comments. So that's always a positive. No, I don't think his curveball might have separated him from a lot of people a while ago. But when you're throwing 92, a lot of hitters are going to know that the hook is coming at some point. But so, yeah, I think it's something, and we say this every week, that it's got to get figured out because September and October is coming fast. And, we're coming down to that stretch run, and it can't be all on Zach Wheeler. We don't know how Lorenzen's going to do. We'll see what he does in his next couple starts. He's coming up here off of 8 days of rest. We'll see how he goes there. Taijuan Walker's already getting pushed back a day. Not sure what's happening there. Ranger is up and down, but I do think Ranger has been very serviceable. So realistically, John, it comes down to, can Wheeler keep this up? Can Lorenzen obviously not throw hitters, but can he continuously have starts where he goes 6+ innings? And can this offense score 4 to 7 runs per night? Now that's really where we're at right now. And with the way the lineup is, with the way the schedule shakes out, you have Washington here coming up. Then you have San Francisco next week. It's a good time to find that offense and pull away even further in this wild card race. What's your biggest? Do you have a big worry right now? Like, does this pitching staff worry you the most, or are you worried about another power outage from the offense?
The power outage thing. It's like I can easily see them smacking the ball across the ballpark this weekend, and then come Tuesday, the series starts against San Francisco, and they completely blow it and get swept or something along those lines, where they just and the pitching. I can see the pitching being great that series too, and then all of a sudden the offense is nowhere to be found, and you lose 2 of 3 or you get swept even, and that's one thing that really worries about me, because that San Francisco is right. That team right there is right behind you, trailing you, and they're how many games are they? 2 games out, a game out,
1.5. I think
1.5. So it's one of those situations where the offense needs to get going this weekend and keep going this weekend, because that's your strength. Your pitching is not the strength. It's never really been the strength of this ball club. Everybody expected this team to be the best offense in baseball, and it just hasn't been. It's been, at times you can see that it can be the best offense in baseball, but it needs to be at a consistent basis, and hopefully we can start seeing that as we get to September.
I agree. So, all right, let's wrap up the Toronto Blue Jays quick 2-game series here. The Phillies split, go 1-1. They're heading to Washington for a weekend series. They are off on Thursday. Shocking to see the Phillies have 2 days off in a week. I feel like that hasn't happened at all this season.
They just played 17 straight games.
I know. So the day off, another day off is pretty good. What was who was a star for you? Who stood out the most in this 2-game set?
Definitely Wheeler game 1. Tonight, Jake Cave. I mean, for a guy who's pretty much the AAA Barry Bonds, it's glad to see him actually raking. He's raking here. But those 2 definitely stood out this series. One guy not particularly at the plate as much, but Rojas really stands out. He just glides through that center field, and he's an
so
unbelievable.
Yep.
And I want to see. I don't care I really do not care what he hits, because he is such a difference maker in center field, and I cannot see Schwartz. He's one of the reasons they lost on. They lost because anybody else in the Phillies outfield catches that ball in left field, and that's 2 outs in that inning, and then of course he dives and drops it and everything, and he had it in the webbing and all of it. But he's one of the reasons they lost. He needs to be at the full-time DH, and we need to see Bryce every single day at first base, not this every 2 games he gets DH. No, he needs to be there every day. I'm tired of seeing this guy in left field. Put Cave out there, put Pache out there. When he gets called back up, let Rojas run center field, and when Marsh comes back, you can figure out what you're going to do. But Rojas should be the everyday center fielder from this point forward. Maybe if he starts shaking a little bit at the plate, where you see him struggling a lot, maybe throw Pache or Marsh back out there, but he needs to be playing a lot of center field now.
I agree. I think it's a foregone conclusion. I think once Marsh gets back, you've got to do whatever you can to make sure Joe Rowe is your everyday starting center fielder. He's just, I don't want to use the words far and away, but in my opinion, watching him play center field, to me, he's far and away their best option out there. He's just so smooth. His jump is so well. He can read a ball off the bat, to near perfection right now. It's a lot of fun to see. I love watching center fielders do great work. So let's going on to the weekend, because we'll be back here obviously Sunday night. The Phillies again have Thursday off, and they start a 3-game set against the Nationals on Friday. The first 2 games are at Nationals Park, and Sunday night is pretty cool. It's going to be in Williamsport for the Little League Classic. That's pretty cool. I love that the Major League Baseball does that stuff. By the way, for anyone wondering, you can watch the Little League World Series, I believe, now. It's been going on for a few days now, and just keep watching it over on ESPN. Jay has them going sweeping the weekend. So I guess he didn't really say Phillies. He has them. Such freaking pronouns, pal. So going again, here are the pitching matchups from a Philly standpoint. They're going to go with Lorenzen, Christopher Sanchez, and Ranger Suarez, with Taijuan Walker getting pushed back. What is your outlook for the weekend series, John? And what do you think they come out of this with?
I think they're going to sweep, and I expect the offense to put up at least 5 runs each of the games.
Oh man, that's like,
I mean, this team is the Nationals are not a good baseball team
no
whatsoever. Their lineup isn't good. Their rotation isn't good. I don't even know who's in their bullpen besides Flanagan or whatever, however you say his name. That's the only guy I can really call in their bullpen.
I will say they're 6-4 in their last 10, so they've been playing decent ball over the last week or so. But again, I agree with you. I don't see this working out too well for the Nationals. I think that tonight in Toronto, the Phillies got a little more taste of that blood, where when those bats are working, I mean, it's fun baseball, and that's what they do. That's when they thrive, is when they just smash the baseball. And what I liked also about Wednesday night was it wasn't just a home run ball. Like, they were manufacturing runs. And that's what this team has to get back to doing is, yes, it sucks when you have to put Schwarber at the top of the lineup, because you're realistically the only reason, per your manager, the only reason he's there is because of the chance he's going to hit a home run. So
he's done 10 times. 10 times he's done. It's not like he's doing it like every 10 leadoff home runs this season. Yeah. And how many of those were not at the start of the ball game? I don't know the exact at the start of the ball game. You know what I mean? Right. It's not like he's homering it. So it's the dumbest thing I've ever this guy can hit for power. It's 10 years ago, this guy wouldn't even be in the major leagues. He'd be remember, was Chris Carter who played? Was that Chris Carter who played for the Astros, where he hit like 40 home runs in a season, and then this next great power hitter, and then he just started stinking, and they're like, I don't care if this guy can hit home runs. He just needs to. It's not baseball, It's not something the home run ball is great, but I still want to see at least hit 250 or 240. Is that hard to ask for?
I'm just saying. I told Jay numerous times on the air here, give me 230, and I will be thrilled with what he does. Thrilled. But the thing is, this is what I mean, is when you have a guy leading off who's a home run hitter and that's it, the rest of your lineup now has to, because he's as close to an automatic out. I mean, again, so look, I'm going to do some quick math here for people. This is Riverside math. So if I'm wrong, let me know, John, because you're a smart guy. If you fail 7 out of 10 times in baseball, you're pretty close to a Hall of Fame baseball player, right? So that's 70% of the time you fail. Based on Kyle Schwarber, he fails 82% of the time in Major League Baseball. And I have yet to hear, or I haven't have yet to read any credible baseball person say why it's a good idea that Kyle Schwarber is the leadoff hitter for the Phillies every day. I have yet to hear. Nobody has come forward with an article or a video that's credible in the baseball world. Like someone like Jason Stark, somebody like that. I was going to say Bob Nightingale, but that wouldn't have worked out too well. Even somebody that covers the Phillies, anybody, please explain to me why it's a good thing that he is a leadoff hitter. Because to me, if you're an automatic out 82% of the time, what are you doing in the top of a baseball order? in probably literally the most important spot of the batting order, which is why Jimmy Rollins was there for a decade straight.
Yeah, but remember we used to complain about Jimmy Rollins because he would hit 260. Now we're complaining the guy hit 184.
Yeah, I wish I could go in the DeLorean and smack myself in the throat for ever complaining about Jimmy Rollins hitting 260 at the leadoff spot. But that's the thing. Like, I'm just at a point now where I should stop talking about it. But when you're striking out 3 times a game, and like you just pointed out the numbers, every week he's going on this span of 0 for 15 or 0 for 19 with like 12 strikeouts. Dude, when we get to the playoffs, like these 3 strikeout games cannot happen ever. Like, I can't take this anymore. I can't do it.
And nobody complains about it. Everybody's, oh well, he hits home runs, so like that's why he's there. Like that's the answer. Every single time it's, oh, he hits home runs and walks. Like, well, what's his on base percentage? 320. It's not like he's a super high on base percentage where
No.
where you can say, oh, that's okay. Like once he may be hitting 220, but his on base percentage probably is over 360 at why he's hitting 220. It's not like, and Schwarber's not even close to that.
No, not even close. Like, you're a home run hitter and all that stuff. That's great. Matt Olson, who, the only person that's probably going to beat him for the NL MVP is his own teammate. So you look at what Matt Olson's doing, last season he hit 240 with a 325 on base percentage, and he hit 34 and 103. That's 34 and 103 is pretty much where Schwarber's going to end up. He might not hit over 100 RBIs, but he'll probably hit 35 to 37 home runs, right? So that's a 240 batting average. This year, he's hitting 276 with a 390 on base. So he completely just, got better and adapted. I just feel like Schwarber's getting worse, and I don't know the answer to it. I know it makes us look bad when we come on here because the guy leads the team. Oh, he's now second or third in RBIs, but he leads the team in runs. He leads the team, I think, in total bases. At what point can we overlook all of that, John, and just admit that Rob Thompson putting this guy at leadoff is ultimately a mistake?
I mean, I think it's a mistake too, because I want my leadoff hitter to hit for at least a little bit of average. I don't really care about my leadoff hitters hitting for power that as much. But I did say this to my dad: where else are you going to put him in the lineup? Because he really doesn't come up in big RBI situations at times. So what do you move him to 4, and then what happens to get bases loaded and he's still striking out looking? That's just a rally killer at some point. So where else do you put him in that lineup? And at least if he walks, now that with Bohm there, not Turner, at least when he gets on base, Bohm hits the ball the other way and moves him to second base and gives Harper opportunities too. That's the one thing I can defend about it. But other than that, it's where else do you put him in that lineup? And and apparently he's a big baby about like hitting leadoff too. So is that an issue about him? Like, is that an issue like where Thompson wants to move him, but because he's a great locker room guy, and that's all I hear is, oh, he's a great locker room guy. You can't get rid of this guy. This guy, there's nobody better than him in the locker room. Is this a situation where if you move him to 4th or 5th, is he going to pout the whole time? And that's what Thompson.
If he pouts, then you don't play. I mean, when Charlie Manuel benched Jimmy Rollins, so it can be done. You can bench players, right? So,
but you're talking about 2 different coaches. One guy's a player's coach, and one guy's a pretty hard ass.
Yeah, that's a good point. And look, the best solution is after they win the World Series this year, he could be somebody else's problem. Find a way. You can keep Rhys Hoskins for cheaper than what you're paying Schwarber and sit him as your DH, and there's a 250 batting average and 30 and 85, and you can hit him second. You can even hit Rhys leadoff. That's fine too. He'll get on base, maybe just as much, but he'll also, like you said, hit over 250. So
I mean, I wouldn't put Rhys. I'm putting Stott first.
I would put Stott first next year.
Stott first, Rhys. I put Rhys second. I have no problem Rhys hitting second at all, and then maybe Bohm 5th.
To be honest, the ideal situation is by next season, Turner figures it out, and that's your leadoff hitter. That's my ideal, and then Stott can be your number 2. I mean, my perfect world going into the season, which is what I would always do, is Turner 1, Harper 2. That's what I've wanted to see. The second that they signed Turner was, I would love to see, the 310 hitting Turner getting on base with a leadoff single or a double, and with that speed, Harper's your number 2, and if he hits a single into right center, left center, you have first and third with no outs, or maybe even 1-0 at that point. So that's my ideal scenario, but we'll see what happens next year.
I mean,
Next year's
that could be a possibility for the playoffs. I mean, Turner's been, since that San Diego, he's been playing extraordinary. I mean, you haven't really seen it the past couple games, but I mean, he's still hitting well over 300 since that standing ovation. So I mean,
John, what do I know? I know nothing about baseball. I know nothing.
So that's one thing we can hope for. I mean, in my ideal world, I would love to see next year Turner, Bohm, Harper, Castellanos, and then Stott 5. I like Stott 5. I mean,
I like Stott 5
He comes
too.
up in big situations, and I think it's a great position for him. It's not too much pressure on him. Yep. And then as you go down the lineup, JT 6, Marsh 7, whoever else you got, I mean, then you're talking about bringing Reese back too. I mean, that lineup has a lot of potential to do some damage next year.
Rojas is still your 9-hole hitter.
I wouldn't move him from 9. I love him at 9. I think
that's
great.
Fine with me. I agree. All right, so before we get out of here, just want everybody to know, head over to manscaped.com right now. Use our code BASEBALL20 for 20% off and free shipping on your order. Also, this show is also presented to you by SeatGeek. Head over to SeatGeek.com right now and use our code ONTHEBUMP for $20 off your very first ticket purchase. Thank you guys so much for joining us live. Again, this show will be up tomorrow morning for all of you who drive to work and listen to us in podcast form. That'll be up for you early tomorrow morning. So excited to get that out to you guys as well. Follow us on Instagram at ringthebell856, on Twitter at ringthebell856, and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Ring the Bell, a Phillies podcast. And I've said this, I'm going to say it on every episode. We have a lot of things coming up. We have a merch store that's going to be dropping hopefully within the next few weeks. We are working tirelessly on trying to get that done. We're 100% going to have a Robert t-shirt. Thanks to John, because I love that. We just got to find like a fun silhouette of Topper to put on the front shirt, and then Phillies writing will write Robert.
Did you see the picture of he was in I guess a Wawa somewhere down south or somewhere. It was a different type of Wawa because they were selling alcohol in this Wawa.
Oh,
and he it's just like him pulling out sunglasses out of his shirt. And he's just like this. And
I gotta see that. You gotta send it to me.
In a suit too.
Oh, you gotta send that to me because we might use that. But yeah, so we have a lot of things coming. Again, we will be here Sunday night. Obviously, the Phillies play at 1:00, but it's impossible for me to get on the live stream at 4:00 in my house with 2 littles running around. So yeah, for sure, we'll be here Sunday night to recap the Washington National Series. I'm actually going to agree with both you and Jason. So timestamp this. I agree with the both of you that the Phillies will sweep the Washington Nationals. I think they will average 5 runs per game this weekend. So that's exciting. Super excited for what we got coming up with you guys. John, this was your first show where it was just you and I, man. So, I'm sitting here hitting leadoff, and you're coming right up behind me, batting number 2. Great job, man. Johnny Mac is permanently part of the show. He's going to be on a lot more often. We're still figuring out in terms of who's going to do what show. Usually it's schedule based, but we're going to try to get to a point where hopefully, all 4 of us can be on at the same time and we can all scream at each other, because that's good video and good audio. All right, so I'm Chris C. Francesco. That's John McElroy. This is Ring the Bell, a Phillies podcast, and we'll catch you guys down the road. See you guys Sunday night. And as always, go Phils.